And now we're going to have another one. And it turns out that only with the benefit of the absolutely most recent science that we've gotten, and this is post-2012, this only was published in a paper last December, we now have unequivocal proof that the universe is a hologram. It is not simply a big bang that spurted out a bunch of matter out of nothing, and they try to get you to believe this seeming contradiction, which is, oh, well, nothing exploded. Okay? So you got nothing, right? Nothing existed. Nothing exists. Nothing existed before. Nothing exploded. That's pretty crazy. And then from that explosion, all the matter in the universe is created all at once. All the galaxies, all the stars, all the planets around those stars, woof, created in one single instantaneous blast. Oh, that's the Big Bang. And so what do? We say, oh, that's the Big Bang, and it's like a little file tab that we file that thought away. We don't ever have to think about it anymore. And what do? They wallpaper you with these equations. If our animation will start. There we go. They wallpaper you with these equations, and they say, well, you know, the universe is really freaking complicated. And you can't understand it because you're just not smart enough and you haven't gone to school. The only way you're going to understand the universe is if you can decode all this mathemagical nonsense. And so let the specialists deal with it. You don't have to worry about it. Doesn't this sound an awful lot like the Roman Empire and church service that was done in Latin? You don't know what the hell they're saying, right? Because you don't speak Latin. This is the Latin of our modern times. In fact, it uses Latin characters a lot of times. So it's the same thing. The priesthood doesn't want you to know how the cosmos works. They want you to just accept the contradiction of the Big Bang and say, boom, that's it. I'm going to propose to you something completely different than this mathematical model. I'm going to propose to you that the universe operates on very simple principles. Principles that you can explain to a kid in elementary school. I'm going to propose to you that the universe actually is like a fluid, and that matter is like a crystal in the fluid. So think about a rock candy for a minute. Rock candy, you got a string dangled down into a solution of sugar, and crystals form on that string after 2 or 3 days. But the crystals weren't there before. You don't see them until they form. What if the universe is like that? What if what they're calling nothing existed? Bullshit. It's always been there. This fluid has always been there. And it crystallizes into matter, and it doesn't all happen at the beginning and never again. It's happening continuously. So then how does this, if this is the model, then how would we explain it in a very, very simple way? And the answer was actually found by a Swiss scientist named Dr. Hans Jenny. Even though there's a J in his name, you pronounce it without the J sound, like a Y. And he studied what he called cymatics. What did he do? It's dirt simple, really. He takes water and he puts sand in the water. That's it. Sand in the water. Normally it looks like milky, cloudy, muddy water. No big deal. If that was the whole experiment, it's boring. But then what he does, the only other thing he does is he vibrates the water with pure sound frequencies. So what started out as only being a function of muddy water and only sound in a spherical area of water, this is another important element, it's a sphere. He vibrates the water and the sand gallops together and forms into this stuff. Now, if you've seen my talks before, you're not blown away right now because you've heard this before, but look at the sacred geometry. Look at that shape in the middle. Does that remind you of something I just showed you a few slides before? That's the Vajravarahi mandala. That's what the Tibetan ETs told us is the center of the universe, the core of all creation. And here it is showing up in a frickin' drop of water. And all you got to do is vibrate it according to a pure sound frequency, which you could do just by toning a certain sound with your voice. If you toned it next to that water, you'd get this sound. And then the other cool thing is that you get different types of geometry depending on what sound you make. Now the thing is, the geometry stays stable, but the little sand particles are moving all around inside. They're on the go. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that this is actually what matter is. Matter is not made of particles. Matter is a crystal out of the fluid caused by vibration. Now, you're not used to hearing that, so that might seem unfamiliar to you, and you might get some cognitive dissonance and go, oh my God, but look, everything I'm going to tell you throughout this talk starts here. So please make sure that you're not spaced out or texting somebody on your phone right now. There's people talking in the back, but that's because they're not actually in here. So everybody in here, I think, is pretty much dead on focused right now, because this is fascinating. So what we're seeing here is 12 different frames of the same drop of water under different frequencies. And as long as you play the same frequency, the geometry stays stable. It doesn't move around. It stays in one single lattice. But the individual sand particles are moving all around. So that's what I'm saying is the solution to the wave-particle duality of physics. Oh, well, sometimes it looks like a particle, and it's just sitting there. It's a solid object. Other times it looks like a wave. Conventional physics says, dude, it's both and it's neither. It's uncertain, so we'll call it the uncertainty principle. I solved it. Woo! The cat is both alive and dead in the box at the same time until you open the box, at which point, dear little sweet kitty is either dead or alive. What a sadistic freaking experiment. Right? You're going to kind of hope that the cat's still alive. So your bias is going to be in favor of the wave instead of the particle, or whichever one they think is the living cat. It's a sick experiment, but here's the point. This solves wave-particle duality. Matter is doing both. You can look at it as the geometry and it looks solid as a particle. You can look at the individual chunks moving around inside and it looks like a wave. Solved it. Boom. Thank you very much. Nobel Prize, please. They got him a Nobel Prize for saying the cat's alive and dead at the same time inside the frickin' box. How's that possible? It's not. I'm an arrogant son of a bitch tonight, I tell you. You guys, it's too big. If the audience was smaller, I'd probably be a lot more humble. You know, that's the problem. So what are the most important shapes that show up in the water? We know what they're called. Plato delineated this back in, like, way before the time of Christ. I think the dialogues, or Timaeus and Critias, these go back at least a few hundred years before the time of Christ. And he outlined these 5 basic shapes, as you're seeing in the next slide, if it'll go there. There we go. We have the tetrahedron, and that should be the familiar one. That's the triangle inside the Star of David, blown into 3 dimensions now as a little pyramid with a triangular bottom. Tetrahedron, which the element associated with it is fire. Octahedron, the one that looks like a great pyramid on the top and the bottom. That's the element of air. Then we got the icosahedron, which is water down at the bottom there. 20 equilateral triangles. Cube, which is 8 sides of squares. And then dodecahedron, which is ether, the mysterious 5th element. You got fire, air, water, and earth, but then you got ether, which is something totally different. So what is this? Again, please, don't lose it. Keep track of what I told you. These are vibrations only. They're vibrations that naturally appear in the sand inside a drop of water. Fluid can make these by simply vibrating the fluid. That's all you have to do. So here they are again. Here's the basic shapes that I'm talking about. Now, it was only a couple months ago, something that I've been saying all along, that quantum physicists are finally catching up. This showed up as it's part of disclosure. This is part of them telling you the truth. Are we living underwater? Researchers believe the universe might be a liquid superfluid. New research suggests space-time might be a kind of ultra-cool fluid. Known as a superfluid, this type of matter possesses unusual properties. And here it is right here. This is the article from Daily Mail. And it says, are we living underwater? Researchers believe the universe might be a liquid superfluid. Is there anything else? Yeah, it would provide a medium for waves and photons to travel like sound in air. But for it to exist, the researchers say it would need a viscosity of 0, and it would provide us with a new theory of quantum gravity. So let's just assume for right now that this is actually the way it works, and I do believe it is. The scientists are catching up to this. This is what we were told in the Law of One material back in the early 1980s. They said space-time should be viewed as a fluid. So this is old stuff as far as if you've been reading those books. Then cut to December of last year. That's when this paper actually got published in a scientific journal, but it originally showed up in October. And what is it describing? Well, first of all, I want to talk about the two scientists who did it. That's Nima Arkani-Hamed and Yaroslav Trunka, and here they are right here. Nima Arkani-Hamed is from the Institute for Advanced Study, and Yaroslav Trunka shows up from Princeton University and is now doing postdoctoral research at the California Institute of Technology, or Caltech. Now, these guys tackled the biggest, nastiest, most dangerous science there is, which is Richard Feynman's diagrams. The Feynman diagrams are the maps of all the squiggly lines that we find in the quantum realm, subatomic particle, it's not a particle, subatomic interactions. So here's the deal. I can cut through a lot of red tape here and tell you that the bottom line, what they found is that all of space and time did not start in a big bang, because the whole concept of time starting is out the window. Now what you're dealing with is that a geometry is creating the universe, and the universe doesn't have linear time. It doesn't have any space. The only thing that really exists is the geometry. And it's actually fluctuating, it's vibrating basically, and the vibrations create the entire visible universe that we now see and love. Hopefully most of us love it. It's all love. It's all love. Spread the love. So, got to lighten it up a little bit when you get into this heavy, heavy physics stuff. So what are they saying? They're saying the universe is made by this shape that they call the amplituhedron. And I thought somebody's phone is getting texted like crazy. Is it mine? Oh, this is my housemate. Stop texting me when I'm on stage, bro. Jeez. Everybody else turn your ringer off. That was very rude of me. He's going to take his riot baton and beat my cell phone in a minute here, right? Kabam! So here's the deal. This is what the shape is that they're drawing, and notice it's very colorful, but it doesn't really convey very much. What they're saying is this is the center of the universe. I'm saying to you that if you zoom down into any point in quantum space, it's always the same point in the entire universe. So if you zoom into any one area, that's the center of the universe. Isn't that trippy? Yep. The center is everywhere and every when. So when you get to that place, it also is before and after, it's past, present, and future, all rolled into one. Time itself is now just a stretch of this geometry. And this is mainstream science in the post-2012 world. So now here's a more technical drawing of what they think this thing looks like. And as soon as I saw that, I got very excited for reasons I'll show you in just a minute. What I'm seeing is these guys are only looking at 1/4 of the original Vajravarahi mandala that the universe was made from, that extraterrestrials told the Tibetans in 800 AD, 1,200 years ago. They said, this is what your universe is made out of. And now it turns out they're freaking right, because this thing is so symmetrical that you can just add in the other 3 corners. Check this out. Watch closely. You add in the other 3 corners of the Merkaba, and you get the shape of the universe. But they didn't need to add all the corners in because the math works by just doing 1/4. Or at least it worked enough that they didn't need to do the rest. So here we are, starting from that. This is not some old scroll nonsense. This is highly advanced technology given to the Tibetans by extraterrestrials ahead of their time. The Vajravarahi mandala. And what does it reveal? It reveals that the entire universe is an emanation of this single form. And that means that consciousness must be an emanation of this form because we are conscious. So think about that one. Chew on that for a moment. You are conscious. This is what the whole universe is made out of. Therefore, the universe must be conscious because every part of the universe is emanating from one single seed that's at the center of every single part of space. There's not